So we're going to include this morning beginning to work with this um, this subtle landscape of thoughts. So as you sit and as you settle in to the practice, I would invite you to try to answer the question, what is a thought? What's a thought made of? It's not necessarily the easiest question to answer, but being with the question is an experience that is really valuable and interesting, in my opinion. And I would add this question, what is a thought and how do you think? How do you find yourself thinking? There are folks who often think mostly or predominantly in images. So they see things in their mind's eye. They see information. And there are folks who predominantly think in language or words. So they like hear a voice in their head. Sometimes the voice is something that they would describe as theirs. Sometimes the voice is something they would describe as someone else's. But the information comes in as language, and they hear words, or they even see words like reading. And then there are folks who have this kind of combo. I think everybody has to some extent a combo, but for some people it's very like even, like they have images and they have sounds inside their head. So they're seeing inside and they're hearing inside. And that's what thought is made up of. And I would invite you to take this time as we practice to observe the way you think. One of the ways that meditating with thought can be a little tricky is that oftentimes, thought is a way of holding information in our minds, and the information is like kind of, it has content, and usually there's a story to the thought. We group thoughts together to have ideas. And those ideas and stories and bundles of thought are things that we can kind of get caught up in and lost and find ourselves drawn away from the present moment on a train of thought. So as we do a practice involving looking at thoughts, my invitation is when you see the thoughts to sort of stay outside of them and just noticing like, oh, there's thinking. And when you notice that you're thinking and you notice how you're thinking, then you're actually sort of stepping off of the train of thought. And the thought goes by and becomes something that you're witnessing just like any other anchor. There's a myth in meditation practice that by practicing, we become able to empty our mind of thoughts and to just stop thinking. But the brain just thinks. It's what brains do. One of the things that brains do. And so I would offer that the idea of clearing your mind might actually just involve being able to see your thoughts as they are and to recognize that there is space in between them. And they're like bubbles that pop or clouds that cross the sky. They rise up and they fall away. And just like listening to sound, there's spaces in between the sound, there's spaces in between the thoughts. So when we're aware of those two, we can start to be aware of like, wow, there's something that's kind of sweet about a mini break from thinking that can occur as we look a little closer. And sometimes those mini breaks can kind of open up and widen and turn into a very interesting experience of just a little time with no thinking. You might also find that if you're practicing with an anchor or experiencing emotions, thoughts like to spring up and clump around other experiences. So maybe you're listening and you hear birds. And then in your mind, like you see a bird or some voice inside of your head is like, oh yeah, the birds are singing. So just noticing that it's like, oh, now there are thoughts and hearing. This is totally true for emotions as well, because, and oftentimes thoughts kind of get in the way of the sensations that make up our emotional experience. So you have a feeling and something inside of you wants to define and describe why you're having the feeling, what the feeling is about, what to do about the feeling. So just notice that if that's happening, you can just be like, oh, thoughts are bubbling up around this feeling, and you can step off of the train of those thoughts and just be with the feeling. a feeling full of thoughts. I'll say one more thing before giving us some quiet time to round out the practice, which is I hope that you feel a lot of freedom to just choose how to be in your mind right now. That you can be with any of the experiences that we've been describing. And that there's also a way in which you can kind of get a little wider than all of these experiences, even if you're feeling like you're having a ton of thoughts and a bunch of feelings. Is there a way that you can kind of lay back and see the whole picture and just allow yourself to have a mind that's full of objects? And at that level, you might feel like none of this is a problem. It's just what's happening. And I'm just taking some time to be with it. And choosing which parts of it to attend to. Or just watching it like a parade that happens to be traveling by the place that I'm sitting. But for the last quiet part of our sit together, I want to ask one more question. It's a question that we ask each other often, and it just kind of floats by as like a way to say hello. But I wonder how your experience will answer this question in this moment. Hey, what's going on? Thanks, everybody.